President Tinubu has established a policy advisory council to support the delivery of sustainable, inclusive economic growth. They've got some aspirations as far as the next 8 years are concerned, doubling Nigeria's economy to $1 trillion, 7% annual GDP, and a whole lot of others. Is this attainable? We have, of course, with us Mr. Tilewa Adebajo, CEO of the CFG Advisory Group, joining us to discuss further. Good morning, sir. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Rotus.
Good to have you to kick off the week. What do you make of those aspirational goals? What's the pathway to get us there?
Very lofty targets,
yeah.
You must say. The Policy Advisory Council consisted of Senator Tokunbo Abiru, who chaired it. Dr. Yemi Cardozo was also there. Sumailu Zubairu, I think the AFC CEO, and Dr. Doris Anite, and they used KPMG as consultants. So very detailed work they have done. So what remains now is the implementation.
Aha. And as far as the implementation is concerned, what pathway are we looking at? Is it fiscal, monetary policy? Which way are they going to take to get there?
Well, it's interesting how they've looked at it. And I think what they've done is that they've looked at how they're going to coordinate fiscal policy, monetary policy, industry, trade and investment.
Okay.
And then they're going to coordinate that with the capital markets. But what is interesting about this is that they actually has also set up a performance and delivery unit. And what they're saying is that they're going to make the performance and delivery unit a cabinet level position.
Okay.
So that basically the monitoring of this can also be very effective. And what they're also saying is that they're going to also have a body that is going to be chaired by the president, who is going to be the coordinating minister of the economy, to be able to coordinate all this. That will be chaired directly by the president. And they're trying to kick this off by giving the president some powers.
Yeah.
And what they're proposing is that they're going to pass an emergency economic reform bill to grant the president special powers to drive the economic reforms. So what's going to happen is that basically we're going to wait for this bill because they're looking to do a lot of landmark reforms to be able to drive this growth. So yes, and then of course fitting square pegs in square holes and round pegs in round holes is going to be very important.
How do you think on the fiscal side they can get that? Is that focusing, like Tilewa Adebajo of PwC is a chair of a tax committee that was announced last week. On the fiscal side, what do you think needs to happen?
Well, that's fine. I think we're looking at what they're doing on the fiscal side. We know they have to look at the Oronsaye report. We've seen all the things they're doing. And obviously with all these reforms, you need to set a lot of those subcommittees, which Mr. Oyedele is heading one of them. There are going to be several more of those sort of committees because you need to do the stakeholder engagement to get the feedback to be able to understand if these reforms can go through. Now, if you take a look at what has happened, PENCOM was set up, and I think Fola Adeola was the first chairman of PENCOM under the Obasanjo regime. And 20 years later, or less than 20 years later, we have a pension industry that has 15 trillion naira in assets. I think that's a very laudable achievement.
Yeah.
So they're thinking about taking out banking supervision out of the central bank and setting up a super regulator for the banking supervision, the capital markets, which includes SEC, insurance, and PENCOM. So while all this might seem things are good, there's a lot of legislation, so a lot of discussion still needs to go in about those sorts of reforms. But on the fiscal side, one of the things we've not been hearing much about is the fact that they're actually going to rationalize some assets.
Okay.
Probably some of the production sharing contracts are going to come down, sell some of those sort of assets to be able to raise money quickly. So that is also another plan. So they've documented the plan. So it's now a question of how they're going to implement it.
Great stuff. What about the monetary side? You've talked a lot about monetary policy in Nigeria. So what do you think needs to happen there?
Well, yes, they're going to have to resolve the ways and means.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're going to have to depend on ways and means till the end of the year when they put their budgets together. And we need to rationalize ways and means. That's going to be very important to be able to achieve the fiscal discipline. On the monetary side, it's actually a lot easier on the monetary side.
Okay.
Because the key challenge on the monetary side, which is the unification of the foreign exchange rates, has been done.
Right.
So now you have a single window. The Naira is finding its level. It's now a question of how to put in the stimuluses to increase the Naira supply. You have about $25 billion to $30 billion a year coming from diaspora remittances. Export proceeds now, people who have the export proceeds, no need to find other ways to bring it. They can bring it into the market. So you need to find ways to increase supply. So you could now, encourage the exporters because, they can bring in their foreign exchange. So that has happened significantly. So the challenge now with monetary policy is inflation. because a lot of the subsidy removals and a lot of all the reforms are going to, we're seeing a lot of cost push drive on the inflation trajectory. So monetary policy now has to focus into managing the inflationary trends. And as you know, they're talking about lower interest rates. So there's a challenge in terms of managing the impact of inflation. Something that the inflation might be short-term, but it's not going to be. Because at 23.5, you know that the inflation numbers by the NBS, the basket has not been reviewed. So if they review those baskets, inflation should be closer to about 28 to 30%.
Wow.
So we need to be able to put a check on inflation. That's going to be the most challenge on the monetary side. On
the trade, industry, and investment, is this a matter of trying to attract those, because the capital flow numbers, inflow numbers came out 28% drop and so on, as far as capital importation. On trade and investment, is that going to depend on who they appoint as the minister or the policies? What do you make of what has to happen there?
Yes, I was listening to your program this morning when you were on the morning program, and you talked about that FDIs was only 4% of the flows, which is really what we talked about, what we needed. And foreign direct investment is a direct correlation to your policies. If your policies are not right, even portfolio investment will not flow, not to talk about foreign direct investments. So we need to be able to show long-term commitment to be able to get FDIs to significant levels. At a high in Nigeria, we had close to $10 billion of FDIs every year.
Wow.
And we need to try to get back to that high, because at that time, our policies were in alignment and we saw those things happen. So if you change your policies, you get the most critical things is that the United Nations General Assembly, the president needs to go there in September and give a major speech as to the policy direction of Nigeria. We need to come out with a budget that is clear and transparent, and ensuring that the ways and means are out of it, so that by the first quarter of next year, when the IMF comes out with their Article 4 report, there's a positive spin on Nigeria. With that positivity, I think you can now begin to see the credit rating agencies beginning to, what I'll say, upgrade Nigeria and put out so that our credit rating goes away from junk bond status, at least goes down to the next level. That will be significant. And of course, you need to begin to watch the credit default swaps and the non-deliverable FX forwards. So those sort of indices are what we need to watch, and we need to align them and bring them in the right way that is attractive for investors.
All right, excellent. They also plan to lift 100 million people out of poverty. I guess that was also part of the last administration's goals. Can a dent be made within that eight-year period, you think? Well,
8 years is a long time to raise the... last time I was on, I told that the Nigerian economy has a potential of 1 trillion. And to get to 1 trillion in 8 years is not very difficult, because at a point in time, don't forget, we were closing on 700. We were at about 650, 670 GDP. And, unfortunately, we lost close to about 150 billion of our GDP. That's why we're down to 150. If we had gained 150 of our GDP, we'd be closer to 900 billion. So it's achievable within the 8-year period, but the policies need to be right, and there needs to be a level of consistency.
Can I quickly, so we're looking at average GDP growth now of last 8 years, 1.3. Do you think the 7% target can also be attainable?
It is attainable. Let us take a look at if you look at the GDP growth, in 2014, we had about 7.5%, close to 8% GDP growth. Inflation then was 10%, 9%. It went to single digits. So it's clear that if you bring down inflation, even to like 12%, 11% in Nigeria, we can deal with 11% inflation easily. You will achieve GDP growth. If you look at the inflation numbers, what happened was that when the ways and means doubled, that was when inflation was at 11% 4 years ago. It was when they did the ways and means and doubled the ways and means that inflation went out of control. So there's a direct correlation with these things, and if we use the right levers, the right monetary policy tools, we definitely can bring down inflation. And if you bring down inflation, you'll be able to achieve those growth numbers.
We are practically out of time, but please, 20 seconds. If jobs, they want to create about 50 million over 8 years. Can we make a dent in job creation?
Job creation and GDP growth go hand in hand. If you grow your economy consistently at 7% over the next 4 years, the jobs will follow, and you lift the people out of poverty.
Fantastic. The CEO of the CFG Advisory, Mr. Tilewa Adebajo, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate your time.